How you doing, YouTube? Matt Massive Beer Reviews. Back with age beer. Weird kooky age beer. Weird kooky Michigan-based age beer. Courtesy of my boy, Rick. This is Oddside Ales. This is their sweet potato souffle rye ale. Yeah. This is a rye ale with sweet potatoes. Okay. Cinnamon, nutmeg, and lactose. Okay. Aged in rye whiskey barrels. I talked about this during the unboxing. This is kind of their take. I would assume they're taking kind of like a pumpkin beer, but more skewed towards Thanksgiving. You know, like, and that's some of my favorite beers. I like pumpkin beers. I can get down with them, but it's more so that some people make really good beers happen to have pumpkin in them. And more often than not, when I really dig those beers when they're using something other than pumpkin, because pumpkin doesn't bring a lot to the table, but certain other things have, you know, butternut squash, a couple different ingredients. So I'm curious to see how the sweet potato now works in this sucker. Big kind of if here is dating on this. So you're talking about, this is a October 1st of 2018. So this is 2019, 2020, 2021. This is April 2021. So you're talking about a 2.5-year-old adjunct-laden sweet potato beer aged in whiskey barrels. Your guess is good as mine. I think this beer is going to be good. That was a really good hiss. Not a huge explosive hiss, but a nice hiss to where you know there's like, you know, if there is oxidation, wasn't too crazy. I'm kind of, you know, optimistic about this sucker. Because what is that? I mean, I think they made like a weird spiced barley wine. Did I even get an ABV off of this? 11%. Yeah, so it's a barley wine with adjuncts in it that's whiskey barrel aged. That's basically what's going on here. And it kind of looks that part. I mean, it has this kind of soft ring of a khaki-colored head on it, but not much of a head whatsoever. It just has that dew to water brown you come to expect from a really nice barley wine. So, I mean, it is up to the task of looking pretty. Label-wise, I love it. It's a really nice, well-done label, but it's also kind of ghetto. It's a little glossy. I'm not a big glossy guy, but yeah, you can see the little date there. I'm not sure if you guys are going to be able to make out a little date there. We'll put it down there, see if it actually focuses on that. Probably won't, but anyway, yeah, let's get a nose in this sucker. It's exactly what I thought it was going to smell like, too. Because it is that kind of cinnamon, kind of slight pumpkin pie kind of spices, is basically what's going on here. A little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of nutmeg, a little bit of soft sweetness, but there's a big, huge spicy component to it. So I assume that is your rye whiskey barrel I play. There could be, who knows, this could be a rye malt-based beer, too, because it is that spicy. Sweet potato, not so much. I would assume that's more of a mouthfeel component, a starch mouthfeel component, more than anything else. But it smells like a risky, well, kind of risky, but a whiskey barrel-aged, rye whiskey barrel-aged, like pumpkinish kind of beer, you know? I kind of like it. I do. Let's dive in. Cheers. That's a fun beer. This really does remind me of Maple Mistress. I know there's no maple in this, but it's a combination of that lactosey sweetness and that rye whiskey barrel. Comes off as like almost, it's not maple syrup, but it's kind of that sweetened confectionery kind of syrupy sweetness. Man, it does remind me, Maple Mistress is a beer by Saucony Creek in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. It's probably one of my favorite kind of pumpkin beers, if you were classified as that, because it uses butternut squash and maple syrup instead of pumpkin. But it has that kind of vibe to it. But you can tell this one definitely has a nice, healthy influence from that whiskey barrel, but not overpowering. Now, that could be a date thing. You know, you're talking about 2.5 years in. Definitely has rounded out some of the flavors here. More prominently that rye, both from a spice component and from a heat component, because it's still a big beer. You're drinking it, you're getting a little bit of heat on the edges, but I believe that's mostly derived from the actual whiskey itself. And that 2.5 years probably has done this beer infinitely good. Yeah. Cinnamon comes through meaningful, but not overpowering. Nutmeg's there, but it's like a third or fourth player, but I think it's very void of nuance without it. And that's the cool thing about nutmeg. You can get really heavy-handed on that. But if it's there, And it's just behind the scenes playing around. It actually, I think, plays a bigger part than your taste buds would ever give it in a lot of these beers, because it's a connective kind of flavor. It takes and connects the whole beer together and makes it one thing instead of just cinnamon, whiskey, blah, 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 blah. I think it does a really important part here. The mouthfeel comes off as a drinkable barley wine. It has this kind of softness to it, this richness to it, this density to it, but it's never anything close to even dense, but it's never even close to being thin. So it has this kind of flannel like kind of texture. I think that's the first time I ever used that in a beer review, word flannel, instead of making fun of people who wear flannel. And man, it's just that combination of that whiskey spirit coming off as like a sweetened syrup in combination with cinnamon really does give me, I mean, I hate to talk about other breweries and breweries reviews, but this is very much kind of like a hybrid version of that Maple Mistress, which, to be perfectly honest with you, is a good thing. I wasn't hoping for that, but I'm like, if it's something in that kind of realm, then I'll be a happy camper. And that's what this is. It's almost like a bigger, huger, less sweet version of that. Because maple syrup can get a little bit kind of hefty. And I think this is fantastic. I think age has done this quite well. Obviously, I'm infinitely curious as to what this beer tasted like before all this time on it. But I'd be hard-pressed to say this beer tasted markedly better. Fresher. And it gives you literally, walk that back, pretty much gives you every single thing on a label in a very meaningful way. I mean, it starts off as a rye ale. Okay, definitely. I missed that part at the beginning. It definitely is rye ale, because you get that rye whiskey barrel and rye ale that gives you that spice. So it's a rye wine instead of a barley wine. And that spice component is needed because you're dealing with sweet potatoes. Now, again, I'm not getting a huge sweet potato kind of taste off of this beer, but I'm sure it's adding a digestible sugar to beef this beer up in combination with a mouthfeel component, which is where I think I'm getting that from, or getting from that piece. Cinnamon's there, nutmeg's there. That lactose, I think, is just a cool added component to let this thing stay sweet, you know, because lactose is in a non-digestible sugar. Where this beer might have ended up a little bit drier, maybe a little bit less sweet, that lactose kind of holds it in place and keeps it at that kind of sweetness level I think it needs to be at. And then aging that rye whiskey barrel, that adds a little bit more spiciness to it, but I think really brings it home with that kind of sweetened kind of spirit, more of a bourbon characteristic, that little bit of soft, sweetened cherry spirit, cherry cordial kind of thing going on. When you throw it in that cinnamon and nutmeg and all that stuff, it really does come off as like a pseudo maple syrup in a very, very fun way. It's a super fun beer, man. I could see some people hating this beer. I could see some people like myself loving this beer, but you know, I'm an aged beer guy. I love aged beer. I like how it plays. Even if I don't know what it tastes like fresh, it's really curious to walk down these kind of aisles and enjoy the beer for what it is and just imagine what it was when it first came out. And just a really fun beer. You know, a lot of breweries take ingredients like these and throw them against the wall and hope they stick. Oddside seems like the brewery that does this more often than not and succeeds. And I think they did a really good job with this one. And thank you very much, Rick, for sending this off. You know, to get beer mails from people is just, you know, it's humbling. It really is. And it's, you know, I love it. And it's, you know, I would definitely keep doing beer reviews, but it makes it a hell of a lot easier, a hell of a lot funner to try beers that I would never have an inkling of trying before, because I would never have this beer on my radar ever if Rick never sent this off. So to have this kind of come across is just a super fun pleasure. I mean, it's old beer, aged beer. It's kind of my wheelhouse. And it seems like me and Rick eventually have to chug some old beer together, because it seems like it's his jam too. So thank you very much, brother. Is this one of the better aged beers I've had as late? Yes. Is it Mount Rushmore status? Is it one of the best old beers that I've had as late Mount Rushmore status? It's in the conversation. It's not at the top. Is it one of the more interesting? And that's the old beers, aged beers. And definitely it's Mount Rushmore status. It's just super fun. You know, this is kind of like old school stylings with new school sensibility in a very fun way. I don't know. I just like it. I like it. Value availability, no idea. Let me guess. So Onside 3 years ago, a whiskey barrel aged Thanksgiving beer, $8. Rick, tell me how much this costs, please. And leave you with, if you like what, will you like this? If you like fun beer, man. If all you give a shit about is hazies and pastry stouts, or conversely, all you give a shit about is clarity and pilsner, or conversely, all you give a shit about is aged lambic and, you know, secondary values on beer, you might like it, you might not. If you like having fun with beer, you'll like this. It's fun. It's beer. It's fun. What more do you want? So there you go. We're reviewing the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Down there if you want to talk about it. Massive Beers if you want to check me out doing the social media stuff. Beer Massif if you want to check me out doing the whole podcasting thing. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully enjoying a little bit of onside right now. Hope to see you next time. Cheers.